Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the news you're never going to find in the news because the news no longer reports the news. They just follow the narrative. That's me. Today is Friday, December 4th, 2020. Those who tell the stories rule society, so says Plato. And settling the social order, that's what we're here to do. We have one agenda. We're here to do some truth, hopefully, with Citizen Street and guerrilla journalism, because journalism is printing what someone else does not want printed. Everything else is just public relations. That's what seems to be going on nowadays out there in the world of media. So here we promise only one thing, the truth. So what's the truth? First, don't trust me, don't trust anyone, do your own research. So let's see if we can hopefully find the truth with data, with facts, with evidence on the 2020 presidential election. What happened? What's going on? How do we wrap our head around all the craziness that's going on? So yesterday in Georgia, pretty huge thing happened. This is a lawyer named Jackie Pick. She is in Fulton County, which is Georgia's largest and most populous county. This is where the city of Atlanta is. So where we're at State Farm Arena, home of the Atlanta Hawks. We're here on Election Day. We're going to go to 1 in the morning, so we're through to 11 for 2020, and we're in this big, sweet, level open area, basically right in these windows or somewhere like that in the stadium. So let's check this out.
You're looking at one big room here. This is where, according to our witnesses, who's given us sworn affidavits, this is where the absentee ballots and military ballots are being tabulated on Election Day. So we have the tape from first thing in the morning all the way past the close of the polls. What you have is essentially two Republican field organizers who were sent here to be observers. At no time were they actually permitted to observe in a meaningful way. I'm sorry, I have a voice issue today. They are roped off with the press on the side.
There's the rope. So you can see my black cursor here. I'm going to be showing you all as we go. It's 11/3/2020. It's 11 a.m. It's sweet level. It's a light out.
Tell you what you could do to help us out so that everyone.
So we're going to have all these poll watchers and media over here the whole time.
Okay.
Just watch them whether they're here or not here.
So now what will happen is these frames can move around. So this can get a little confusing, but I'll make sure to make it clear. We have two observers there that are going to show up, not at this point, this is in the morning, as you can see the daylight. They're going to get there at about 8 o'clock to watch the tabulation of absentee and military ballots. But according to their affidavits, at about 10 o'clock, there was one person working the polls who told everyone in the room to leave on the basis they were going to stop counting and return at 8:30 in the morning. So if I can get the frame for approximately 10 o'clock or 10:20-ish. Okay. We'll have to come back to the morning for a different reason in just a second.
We're not going to go there, but I'll tell you why they wanted to do that. So now it's flashed tonight, as you can see through the windows.
Okay, so you can see what time it is.
And here, almost 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern.
So we're at about 10 o'clock. And what you'll notice is that the workers are present, working, and you have, back in that corner I pointed out to you, the press and the Republican observers.
That's this. They pushed them back, didn't they? Of course they did.
So according to the witnesses, the Republican observers, there's a lady who has blonde braids who comes out to announce we're going to stop counting. Everyone go home.
That's this lady right here.
And in fact, we see that.
This lady
What
right
happens
here,
is
blonde,
everyone
long braids,
clears out,
hair.
including the Republican observers and the press,
The blue apron on.
but 4 people stay behind and continue counting and tabulating well into the night from that point, which is going to be about 10:25 when they all clear out, or 10:30. And they will continue counting unobserved, unsupervised, not in public view, as your statute requires, until about 1 in the morning. The reason we know this is because when our Republican observers were forced to leave, they went to the Central Tabulation Center, and they got word from a news crew that in fact counting had continued. They have information that not everybody left according to plan, and some people stayed behind. So this shocked them, so they returned back to State Farm Arena at about 1 o'clock in the morning, where they confirmed that in fact people had just left State Farm Arena in contravention of what they'd been told by the supervisors who are running this operation. So, okay, we're still at about 10 o'clock. Can you take us to about 10:25 so we can see the change? You're going to watch this place be busy and filled up to emptied at some time between 10:25 and 10:35, which is consistent with what the affidavits say.
But here's who here, but they're still here.
Okay, so 10:25, they're still there. Let's go to 10:35.
This is who she was looking at when she's saying they're still there. Because nothing, quote unquote, nefarious can happen.
It takes it just a few minutes for the frames to actually catch up with it. There you go, with the time that you're seeing. So here you see it's all cleared out. We just went from 10:25 to 10:37. The place is a ghost town. This is where the people were vacated and told, go home, come back at 8:30. We will now stop working and stop counting. But notice who stays behind. You have 4 people, consistent with our affidavits, who stayed behind. And so you'll see the lady in purple. You'll see 2 women in yellow in the back, which is where the scanners are there at the top right frame. And then the lady with the blonde braids also, who told everyone to leave. Those are the 4 people who will stay behind. So the Republican observers said they were the last people to leave State Farm Arena, along with the Fox News crew, excepting those 4 people. So what you're going to see, look at the ladies in yellow. You'll see that they will begin just sitting still, doing nothing, ostensibly not working, because after all, they said they're going to stop counting. They will wait until the witnesses over there in that roped off area, the press and the observers, leave the room. Then you'll see them move into action and begin scanning ballots. Okay, so I think what we can do now is fast forward to about 11. Do you see them? Yeah. Okay, there they walk.
They're all gone. 11 o'clock, basically.
But the ladies in yellow are still there. Yes, keep your eyes on the lady in purple and the 2 in yellow and the woman in the blue apron with blonde braids, because those are the people who stay behind. Okay, so what you're going to see happen at about 11 o'clock is, once everyone is gone, coast is clear, they are going to pull ballots out from underneath a table. Watch this table.
This one right here.
So actually this will take a few minutes, but we did not know when we first watched this, okay, is it normal to store suitcases of ballots under a table, under a tablecloth? Is that how they run the place? Maybe this is what they've been doing all day. Maybe this is what they're doing under all the tables. So we went back and watched the video as a team of us. We don't see that. What we see is typically you're going to find ballots, back in this corner, or coming in through a door, and then they get moved and circulated throughout the room. And it can get a little confusing because they have these black containers of ballots. They have the U.S. Postal Service containers. But what we were trying to do when we determined that there were ballots being pulled out from underneath this table is, what was the chain of custody? Where did they come from? Who put them there? When did they put them there? We only reviewed this at about 1 in the morning last night for a couple of hours, so we're going to need about 14 hours to watch it carefully because we fast-forwarded through it several times and could not find that particular frame, but here's what we can tell you for sure. At about 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to roll this back and show it to you. There you go. So now they're going to start pulling these ballots out from under this table. This table, the black one, was placed there by the lady with the blonde braids at about 8:22 a.m. in the morning. So she put that table there. So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the pretense that we're going to stop counting, is the person who put the table there at 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table.
She's feeding them. She pulled him out of the box. She pulled the box from out from under. This guy has another one.
So he just
She pulled here. She pulled one here. She pulled the ballots out. She started feeding the scanner that counts the votes.
So what are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses? Is the question. So these machines can process about 3,000 ballots an hour. You have multiple machines there, and they're there for 2 hours. So you do the math. How many ballots went through those machines in those 2 hours when there was no one there to supervise, to be present, consistent with your statutes and rules, to supervise the tabulation? We believe that could easily be, and probably is certainly, beyond the margin of victory in this race. Because if it's only 3 scanners working for 2 hours, right, that's 18,000 ballots that went through. So we're now at 11:09. There were, in addition to the 4 workers that you see there were 2 other people who were bringing ballots in and out. The gentleman in red that you saw, and then a second person, I can't tell if it's a male or female based on their hair being pulled back in their mask, but in any event, that's 6 total people. And so if we were to sit here for the next 2 hours, what we would see is that this operation just goes on and on and on. They're scanning until about 12:55 in the morning. So we kept the video running. And we can show you the people who gave us the affidavits reappearing at that time, just as they said, around 1 a.m. to find out, are they in fact counting after they told us they would stop working or not? And we will fast forward to that. But have you?
All right. So that's that. So to review, 2 poll observers are supposed to be present, right? Along with members of the press. They were all told to leave around 10 o'clock p.m. because all the vote counting was done for the day. Georgia law requires poll observers to be present when any vote is being counted. After the 2 poll observers left, someone from the news media told them that the counting started up again, and so they returned at 1 a.m. and they saw the vote counters leaving at that time. The table that the large black cases were pulled out from arrived at about 8 o'clock a.m., put there by the same lady who told poll observers and press that vote counting was done for the day at 10 o'clock p.m. 11 o'clock p.m., vote counters start pulling large black cases, just like the one you see in the bottom right-hand corner there, full of ballots out from under the table, 4 in total, that arrived at 8 o'clock a.m., and vote counting resumed. These machines can produce about 3,000 ballots an hour, multiple machines, 3, you saw them, vote counters there for around 2 hours, 3 scanners working for around 2 hours equals around 18,000 ballots being counted, and of course, Joe Biden is currently up by around 18,000 votes in GA. So here's some questions that was asked. What are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? Why are they counting them when the place is cleared out with no witnesses? And how many ballots went through those machines in those 2 hours with no poll observers, like there must be according to Georgia law, or those votes do not count. I'm sorry, but it's true. So how is this process supposed to work?
Let's go back to Devin Dwyer in D.C. with an inside look at the ballot counting process at the Board of Elections warehouse. Devin, what's the scene like there, and how does the ballot counting process work?
Hey, Diane. Yeah, the great count is underway across the country right now. 33 states don't begin counting their mail ballots until Election Day. So you can imagine over 100 million mail ballots and early votes this year. It is a tall order, and we are inside the D.C. Board of Election headquarters, where, as you can see behind me, they are starting to process and count these mail ballots by the thousands. This is called the scanning and sorting machine. This is sort of the first stop when your mail ballot comes in. This is something you would see in most states around the country. You see this election official here putting the ballots through. They're automatically entered into the system, and they're sorted by ward. And then the next step, Diane, is every single mail ballot in every state in the country has to be verified.
Watch this very closely. It's very important.
Elections officials here are taking a look at the signatures to make sure that you are who you say you are when you send in that ballot. They're comparing the signature on the ballot to a signature on file from, say, a driver's license or your election registration form. Once your ballot has been verified and they double check that signature, this is the extraction process going on behind me. You see the dozens of elections officials here beginning to open those envelopes. They take the secrecy envelope off, and they start to unfold the actual ballots to be counted. As you can imagine, a very labor-intensive process. This is going to be going on all day. They tell me their goal is to get through all these ballots today, as many as they can. And finally, over here in the corner is where you see the ballot tabulator. Once the ballots are all unfolded, they're run through an electronic machine that is not connected to the internet. It's secure in that way. It has its own server, and those data are then tabulated and sent back to election headquarters. So this year, Diane, this process right here, front and center more than ever before, because so many Americans have actually mailed in their ballots, as we've been talking about.
Thank you, friend.
Let's go back to Deb.
All right. So a couple of things I observed from these two videos. So let's go to this one first. So watch her. She just took that down. She brought it up. She's now taking everything she needs to take out of that box that she just took from under that table, and she's laying them out nice and flat and smooth and no problems at all, just laying perfectly, right? So here we go. Let's go to this one now. Let's look at how she's dealing with these ballots here. So she is taking these out of the envelopes, and watch her as she's taking them out, how folded they are and how she tries to push them down and they pop right back up. The paper from here is obviously much different, at least in my observation, than this paper here. Let's find out why that's so important here in a second, once I can get to the next slide. So remember, according to witnesses who have signed sworn affidavits, which a sworn affidavit means I'm going to make this statement and I'm going to sign that it is true, and if it is not true, I'm going to go to jail. So this is where the absentee ballot and military ballots are being signed or are being counted. I missed typo there, sorry. Are being counted on election day. What we just saw, that video from State Farm Arena. Absentee ballots are folded and put into an envelope. Did you see any of these counters running these machines take any paper out of any envelope, like the lady in the legit place where the cameras were in Philadelphia was taking them out? Did you see anything going on like that in Atlanta? Of course not. You definitely did not. You didn't see any unfolding. You didn't see any pushing them down. You didn't see any of that. Does the absentee ballot itself, where the legitimate process is being done, look like the supposed absentee ballots they're counting in Georgia at State Farm Arena at 11 p.m. To me, the answer is no, too. So why is this so important? This is so important because an absentee ballot has to go through the mail. If it doesn't go through the mail, it doesn't count. If it goes through the mail, it has to fit in an envelope. If it has to fit in an envelope, it has to be folded in order to fit in that envelope. If you're just taking things from a case and setting them down and not having any trouble like the other lady was, who was actually taking them out, then how is that an absentee ballot? How is that legit? How was that actually done correctly, properly in order to be counted as a vote? In my opinion, the answer to that question is it can't. So what are some potential issues that people are concerned about is the question is being asked here.
Is forgetting to sign your mail ballot. Remember, each of these envelopes right here are signed by a real voter, and we showed you how that verification process actually takes place. That's the critical step. The third most common mistake is a mismatch. You're simply too sloppy with that signature, and so it gets flagged. Most states give you a chance to fix that, Diane, but you got to be paying attention. If you get a notice from your state election department, respond to that immediately, because the window to fix a mail ballot mistake is very small after today.
So now it's too late, right? You can't fix it. But anyway, that was so important, right? Because you have to sign it and you have to match your signature in order for your vote to count. All right. So let's move on to the next. So because of that, because of the video we just saw from State Farm Arena, this happened. Governor Kemp, the governor of Georgia, calls on the Georgia Secretary of State to conduct a signature audit of ballots. He did not want that to happen until now, thanks to this video that we just saw. That is so huge. Why? Because if those things if those ballots taken out of the cases weren't legit, if they don't have signatures on them, if they don't match an actual voter who matches the ballot and the address and all that stuff, guess what? Doesn't count, doesn't work. So why is this so important? To reiterate, because thanks to that closed circuit TV video from State Farm Arena, we possibly saw 18,000 votes get counted with no mandated observers. So basically, no one knows much, if anything, about these potential 18,000 ballots. Therefore, at the very least, a signature verification needs to happen with observers present to make sure every legal vote was counted in Fulton County, Georgia. And once again, Joe Biden is up by about 18,000. So based upon what we just saw there, there's tons of things going on around accusations and conspiracy theories and on and on and on, right? That event that we just saw was a conspiracy theory until thanks to that video for the longest time. So what else might be going on? So our friend Patrick Basham wrote an article in the Spectator USA on November 30th, and it's entitled 20 Reasons Why the 2020 Presidential Election is Deeply Puzzling. To say out loud that you find the results of the 2020 presidential election odd is to invite derision. You must be a crank or a conspiracy theorist. Well, mark me down as a crank then. I'm a pollster, and I find this election to be deeply puzzling. I also think that the Trump campaign is still well within its rights to contest these tabulations. Something very strange happened in America's democracy in the early hours of Wednesday, November 4th. Yeah, we just saw a video of that. And the days that followed. It's reasonable for a lot of Americans to want to find out exactly what. True. First, consider some facts. President Trump received more votes than any previous incumbent seeking re-election. He got 11 million more votes than in 2016, the third largest rise in support ever for an incumbent. By way of comparison, President Obama was comfortably re-elected in 2012 with 3.5 million fewer votes than he received in 2008. Trump's vote increased so much because, according to exit polls, he performed far better with many key demographic groups. 95% of Republicans vote for him. He did well with rural male working class whites. He earned the highest share of all minority votes for a Republican since 1960. Trump grew his support among black voters by 50% over 2016. Wow. Nationally, Joe's black support fell well below 90%, the level below which Democratic presidential candidates usually lose. They've said over the years that if a Republican wins 10% of the black vote, it's over. Trump increased his share of national Hispanic vote to 35%, with 60% or less I'm doing great reading, by the way, thanks. With 60% or less of the national Hispanic vote, it is arithmetically or mathematically impossible for a Democratic presidential candidate to win Florida, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico. Shocker. Bellwether states further swung in Trump's direction than in 2016. Florida, Ohio, and Iowa each defied America's media polls with huge wins for Trump. Since 1852, only Richard Nixon has lost the electoral college after winning this trio, and the 1960 defeat to John F. Kennedy is still a subject of great suspicion. Midwestern states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, always swing in the same direction as Ohio and Iowa, their regional peers. Ohio likewise swings with Florida. Current tallies show that outside of a few cities, the Rust Belt swung in Trump's direction. Yet, Biden leads in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin because of an apparent avalanche of black voters or votes in Detroit, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. Biden's quote-unquote winning margin was derived almost entirely from such votes in these cities, including Atlanta, as coincidentally, his black vote spiked only in exactly the locations necessary to secure victory. Must be a Christmas miracle. He did not receive comparable levels of support among comparable demographic groups in comparable states, which is highly unusual for the presidential victor. We are told that Biden won more votes nationally than any presidential candidate in history, but he won a record low of 17% of counties. What? He only won 524 counties in all of the United States, as opposed to 873 counties Obama won in 2008. Yet Biden somehow outdid Obama in total votes? Sure, of course, yeah, definitely. Victorious presidential candidates, especially challengers, usually have down-ballot coattails. Biden did not. The Republicans held the Senate and enjoyed a red wave in the House, where they gained a large number of seats while winning all 27 toss-up contests. Trump's party did not lose a single state legislature and actually made gains at the state level. Despite poor performances, media and academic polls have an impressive 80% record predicting the winner during the modern era. But when polls err, non-polling metrics do not. The latter have a 100% record. Every non-polling metric forecasts Trump's re-election. I'm doing great. For Trump to lose this election, the mainstream polls needed to be correct, which they were not. Furthermore, for Trump to lose, not only did one or more of these metrics have to be wrong for the first time ever, but every single one had to be wrong at the very same time. Not an impossible outcome, but extremely likely. Atypical voting patterns married with misses in polling and non-polling metrics should give observers pause for thought. Adding to the mystery is a cascade of information about the bizarre manner in which so many ballots were accumulated and counted. Here are some. Number one, and you may have seen something like this happen. Late on election night, with Trump comfortably ahead, many swing states stopped counting ballots, maybe around 10 o'clock. In most cases, observers were removed from the counting facilities. Yeah, sometimes around 10 o'clock. And then counting generally continued without the observers. Yeah, at about 11 o'clock till about 1 o'clock. May have seen something like that happen before. Number two, statistically abnormal vote counts were the new normal when counting resumed. They were unusually large in size, hundreds of thousands, and had an unusually high 90% and above Biden to Trump ratio, of course. Number three, late arriving ballots were counted. In Pennsylvania, 23,000 ballots have impossible postal return dates, and another 86,000 have extraordinary return dates. They raise questions, serious questions. Number four, the failure to match signatures on mail-in ballots. We've talked about that. The destruction of mail-in ballot envelopes, which must contain signatures. Yes, they must. Historically low absentee ballot rejection rates despite the massive expansion of mail-in voting. Such is Biden's narrow margin that, as political analyst Robert Barnes observes, if the states simply impose the same absentee ballot rejection rates as recent cycles, then Trump wins the election. Essentially what they're saying there is they have a specific rate that they usually reject ballots by. Historically, it's almost the same every single time. Well, the rate this year is way less than what it's been historically. Number 6, missing votes. In Delaware County, Pennsylvania, 50,000 votes held on a 47 USB cards are missing, of course. Non-resident voters, Matt Brainerd's Voter Integrity Project estimates that 20,000 people who no longer met residency requirements cast ballots in Georgia. Biden's margin is 12,000. When he wrote this, it was 12,000. It's now 18, like I said before. So Matt Brainerd's Voter Integrity Project, it had a call center, and they called all of these people and asked them if they still lived in Georgia. He literally talked to these people not in person, but on the phone, and heard straight from the horse's mouth if they still lived in Georgia. And over 20,000 of them said no. There you go. Number 8, serious chain of custody breakdowns. They talked about that in the video. Where do these ballots come from that were under the table? Where was the chain of custody when it comes to those ballots? Invalid residential addresses. Matt Brainerd found a bunch of ballots that people were putting their address as a P.O. box at the post office or a P.O. box at the UPS store or places like that. And he found many of them all across the country. He only focused on those states that are in contention. And so, yeah, that's what's going on too. That's illegal, by the way. You can't do that. A P.O. box is not a residential address, of course. Record numbers of dead people voting, ballots in pristine condition without creases. That is, they had not been mailed in envelopes as required by law. That's the point I was making previously. In Georgia, statistical anomalies. In Georgia, Biden overtook Trump with 89% of the votes counted. For the next 53 batches of votes counted, Biden led Trump by the same exact 50.05 to 49.95% margin in victory every single batch. It is particularly perplexing that all statistical anomalies and tabulation abnormalities were in Biden's favor. Shocker, of course. Whether the cause was simple human error or nefarious activity or a combination, clearly something peculiar happened. If you think that only weirdos have legitimate concerns about these findings and claims, maybe the weirdness lies in you. All right, well, that was the news that you're never going to find in the news, because the news no longer reports the news. They only report that narrative, which doesn't follow what we were doing today. And what else? Thank you for helping us upset the social order. Hopefully we answered some questions. Hopefully we know, hopefully I didn't make things worse for you. I apologize if I did. Hopefully we were able to promise the truth and give the truth. Obviously, don't trust me, anyone. Do your own, because I could be doing nothing more than just spitting in that wind, folks.